Hi there, and welcome to Recruiting Masters, brought to you by CanadaFootballChat.com Prospect Game and CFC 100 Showcases. We have Clint Uttley on the show today. Clint was a former youth sports head coach and is the National Recruiting Analyst and the head of the CFC Scouting Bureau, which develops the CFC 100 and CFC 60 top player class rankings in Canada. Welcome to the show, Clint.
Thanks for having me, Katie. Happy to be here.
So, Clint, today's topics, we're going to just break down the upcoming events now that are going to be happening in March, that now that the February open showcases are finished, as we make our way on the path towards the CFC prospect game that's going to be broadcasted on TSN in June. As well, we're gonna go over some of the players who stood out in Burlington this past Monday, Family Day on the 18th. We were out in both you and I were out in Burlington to look at that showcase and check out the athletes that were there. As well as we're going to discuss the differences between these various showcases, combines, and tryouts, because we do have a lot of questions from parents as to the difference and how to differentiate between them. And then we're going to finish up today with the CFC's recruiting tip of the day. And today is being coachable important in my recruitment. And we got a couple funny stories that happened on the Monday that we can just relate to that specific question. So folks, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @chatfootball, Instagram CFC_football, and YouTube for more exclusive content. So the events that are coming up are the CFC prospect game tryouts. Again, we'll be in 5 cities across the country. In Vancouver, this will be doubling or piggybacking on the Fox 40 Prospect Challenge from March 14th to the 17th. Then we will be in Winnipeg, Wednesday, March 20th, followed by Calgary on Friday, March 22nd, Burlington on Monday, March 25th, and then finishing off in Montreal on Wednesday, March 27th. Now, Clint, can you just give us just a really quick overview of the invitation process and maybe when these athletes can start looking forward to being invited to these 5 tryouts?
Yes, now that we've completed the showcases, the open showcases, which we'll explain here in a bit. We've done the showcases. They've been done in each of the major cities. So now lists are in the final stages of being completed. So people who are getting invited to each of the tryouts for the prospect game. So starting this week, the invitations will start to go out, and then by middle of next week, all the invitations will have completed the process of pushing out those invitations. At which point, athletes will receive an invitation. We'll give them a 3 to 5 day window to respond to the invitations, and then it'll from there we'll build those rosters for those different areas. So the people who will be trying out. So over the next, I would say today is Wednesday. Between this Wednesday and next Wednesday, everybody who is going to receive an invite will receive one.
Perfect. So the players that stood out in Burlington on Monday, this past Monday, let's just go through a few of them. We've got a range of ages here. So the first one we have, or that we've got listed here, is Dylan Simpson, who is an athlete, 6'1", 185. He's the class of 2022. We kind of both, well, a bunch of us did sort of a double take of Dylan when he walked in, because we have this picture of this athlete who participated in the FPC last year, and he is twice the athlete that he was last year. He definitely has really started to fill out his form. What did you think of Dylan this year?
Yeah, Dylan's a really good football player. He's like many of you'll see younger football players, so say student athletes or players who are in grade, say 7 through 9. Some of them, and their body changes so much in a 2-year window that it's at points, some of them are they're recognizable, but you're kind of like, you have to confirm if that's the actual person. So I mean, And that's what causes so much movement on our lists, especially when we get into like the lists that are 2 or 3 graduating years out. So like, say we push out our sophomore list or even our junior list, you'll see there's going to be massive movements on those lists because a 5'10" receiver who was exceptional and who runs extremely well all of a sudden is not 5'10", but 6'1", and they're no longer 155 pounds; they're 190 pounds, and that's obviously going to fall into their ranking. And if they continue to be the type of athlete they were, or if they just still distinguish themselves, or they're just faster than everybody else, like they were in the lower age groups, well, then they continue to climb the 100 list. So, like Dylan's kind of falling into that category right now. Out of the class of 2022, 2023, he was probably for sure one of the top 3, if not the top player, kind of in that grad year or in that part of the combine. So yeah, Dylan looked really good.
So the just to let everyone know, the lists as we kind of candidly refer them to are the CFC 100 player class rankings, which you can find on CanadaFootballChat.com under the rankings tab. The CFC 100 as well as the CFC 60 for the different classes. Right now we have the 2021, 2020, and the 2019 has its final version out. So you can check that out on CanadaFootballChat.com. Moving on, you have another athlete, Jaden Mallett, defensive lineman, who already looks like a varsity D lineman. I mean, he's 6'2", 250, but he's the class of 2021/2022. We're not, they put both of them on there, so we're not quite sure which one he is. But what stuck out about him?
Jaden, I'm not sure. Like, I'll confirm his weight because I got 2 different weights from like 3 different people. So I mean, yeah, he just looked like he was a varsity player already. I actually thought he had showed up at the wrong age group or category or combine. But I mean, yeah, he's really impressive physically. He looks the part. Big thing with athletes at that age is they put on tremendous amount of size and weight, and sometimes it takes their body a little bit of time to catch up. But you could just see the potential. Totally could see the potential, and he did. He looked like
he did
3 to 5 years older than what he actually is, and you could tell he has the intangibles that you're looking for, and will no doubt evolve into an outstanding defensive lineman as long as he works hard and kind of fills out, not necessarily fills out, but just gets everything kind of centered and leaned out and figured out, and just the movement skills with all that new weight, so on and so forth.
So you've listed a couple of quarterbacks here. We've got Miguel Camboya, Rice Staley, and Matthew Gannett. All 3 are pretty good. They're we've known about them for a little bit. So Camboya, he's a 6 foot, 150 pounder, class of 2022. He can really chuck the ball.
Yeah, he definitely, like you just said, there was 3 quarterbacks, and they're all from like that part of Ontario. Like, unless my geography's way off, Woodstock's heading towards that particular like Essex, Windsor area. So I mean, but Miguel like throws the ball extremely well. I'm not sure if he's quite 6 feet. He was staring eye to eye with me, or maybe even a little taller than me. And I know I'm 5'11", so I mean, yeah. So I mean, Miguel was throwing the ball well. You can tell with young quarterbacks, some of them, they kind of have the it, or they have the fundamentals down, and they're confident, and they're kind of like got all those things that you're looking for in young quarterbacks. And I would say he has those. He's athletic though, and he, like you mentioned, he can throw the ball.
And then Staley's another young quarterback who has started to fill out. He's a 2023 prospect.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably the thicker of the 2, and he played some quarterback and some receiver. He seemed like he jumped in a couple different things. And when I watched his film, even being as young as he was another one of those young quarterbacks or young prospects who's gotten quite a bit taller and added quite a bit of size over the last, say, 2 years. So, I mean, but yeah, he really impressed. And I just liked the way he handled himself and his demeanor. So, I mean, yeah, he looked good as well.
And then Gannett, who plays at Holy Names, he's growing up. He's filling out also. He's 5'11", 150 pounds, but he did a pretty good job.
They all did a good job. The only difference between the 3 is that Matt actually played up So he ran through all the drills with the class of 2020. So I mean, yeah, Matt comes from a winning program. You can tell he works extremely hard at getting better. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops over the off season, just because you could tell he puts a lot of time into it. And usually those kids, they have these like massive improvement spikes, and then it's just a case of seeing if 5'11" becomes 6'1", so on and so forth. But yeah, he works extremely hard. It's extremely important. And the kid, he obviously has a pretty good foundation to build on as well. And he comes from a football family, which goes a long way when you think about like football IQ and just approaching the game the right way.
So moving on to some of the the 2020 and then a few of the 2021 still class, we had the Smith twins, Jawan and Jalen, who we were looking forward to watching at this combine because they are one of our CFC 100 ranked players, both of them. So Jawan is a running back. He's 5'11", 175 pounds. They both play at St. Thomas More. He had a solid combine. He looked really good in the competitive drills.
Yeah, he did a really good job. I thought he did a solid job during the actual combine portion. And then when we put the running backs and the linebackers into, basically, it was almost like a open field kind of tap the hip mirror drill kind of deal. I'm pretty sure he, for lack of a better word, he undressed a couple of guys in one-on-one situations where he put his foot in the ground or made a move, and they were just basically reaching or grasping, and he was by them and had not just won the drill, but was dominant within the drill. So, I mean, he did a really good job. His brother, I'm thinking, just going off by what I saw and just standing beside them and taking notes, so on and so forth, is a little bigger. Obviously plays on the other side of the ball, but he was impressive as well. He looks the part, and he runs really well.
He runs really well.
Yeah, and I just like how both kids carry themselves. It was very reminiscent, or reminded me of the twins that came out of BC last year, the Phil Potts,
yeah,
who went to the UFC, and both of them, I think they started as freshmen and absolutely lit it up. So I mean, I kind of see that sort of potential in both those young men.
And then you've got Matt Lynn, quarterback, 6'2", 165 pounds, a 2021 kid. You were talking to me earlier, and you were saying that you kind of thought he was the sleeper of the combine. He ran extremely well. He showed really well. So why was he the sleeper in your opinion?
Well, I just like, sometimes when you see kids, I mean, and it's not always the most straightforward assessment, but when you see kids and they're in shorts and t-shirts, you can kind of see how they're put together. So that kind of, he caught my eye because he was a taller, longer, leaner athlete. And then he just kind of added on that when he ran a 40, and he ran a really good time. I don't have it offhand, but he ran a really good time. And then you just kind of see him run around, and he's doing some football drills, and he's doing some footwork drills, and you're just like, okay, you have my attention now. Who are you? So, I mean, as I go through a combine, or I go and observe a combine, there's a couple of things I look at. Those, I just explained what I look at, but I take notes all the way throughout. And as I was taking my notes, I made a bunch of notes on him. And then obviously I was like, yeah, I would say if I was to assign the sleeper to any of the kids in the class of 2020, or the prospect showcase that's what I was observing at that point, I would give it to Matt.
And then you have another quarterback, Carter Stevens, out of Clint. He has a pretty good arm. It looked like he's solid placement.
Yeah, he was placing the ball. He's putting in some good windows. There was like three pretty solid quarterbacks in that combine group. So I mean, he was doing a good job, and I know that. I've watched his film. So the kid, obviously, or the player, is obviously he's a gamer. He just kind of has the right mindset, if you can call it that. He seemed like he was doing a good job. So yeah, I was impressed with Carter as well.
And then one of the 2021 defensive ends, who has an outstanding frame at 6'4", 230 pounds. He was super quick off the ball. Silas Hubert. What did you think of him?
Yeah, I really like Silas. Silas actually is. There's like two or three of the prospects from that 2020 or that showcase, the prospect showcase that went on, that had probably pushed their way onto the CFC 100. I mean, obviously, we have to go through our process and evaluate Silas against the other defensive linemen on the list. But I'm thinking that like he's put himself in a position where he'll have a good shot at possibly making the next CFC 150 that's going to come out. If he does stay in the class of 2021, it won't be out for a couple of weeks, but he's put himself in that sort of position.
Yeah, he did. He definitely has a great frame for sure. Then we moved on along to some of the post grads, their classes of 2020. We have a few here. Ty Bennett, offensive lineman, 6'1", 250 pounds. He's an undersized center, but he was really impressive.
Yeah, Ty, there was actually three offensive linemen. We're going to talk about two of them. There was three offensive linemen in that post grad group. So these would be like players who could have graduated grade 12 this year. A lot of them are pushing through, as they call it, 12B, as I call it, post gradding. But I mean, Ty was he was a little on the shorter side. However, he's got a lot of weight in his lower half. And talking with some of the coaches from that area, Ty is obviously an offensive center, which we've already mentioned, but Ty also was nominated as the league MVP as an offensive center. So you kind of got to put that in perspective. So, I mean, he is like extremely competitive and extremely feisty.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so like you look at that and it's like the intangibles that you look for in, say, a center specifically are somebody who's vocal, somebody who's smart, somebody who's tough, and somebody, if say we're using that term, the it factor for a quarterback, well then I would say Ty probably has it for a center. I would have no problem like taking a player like that. If I was still a university coach, I would have no problem recruiting a Ty Bennett onto my team and turning him into my starting center for a good 3 years. And know that he's probably going to evolve into an all-conference performer.
Well, that's pretty high praise for that young athlete. Then you have Daniel Hosevar, who was the other offensive lineman he's 6'4", 255 pounds from Bishop Ryan. He has pretty good feet and outstanding motor, and he was another one of the really aggressive players that stood out. What do you think of him?
Yeah, Daniel I liked his demeanor as well. He has all the things you're looking for. I mean, he's a little light at 255, but he could easily pack on weight, and he's actually like fit. When you, like when you think of the 6'4", 255, there's no wasted weight there.
Nope.
So I mean, Daniel, like Ty, now that they've post-graded or they've made their intentions that they're actually going back for 12B. Daniel's another one of them who will probably push his way on to a 100, most likely a 150, but probably a 100 list, a CFC 100 list for the class of 2020. But he was extremely impressive, and he kind of checks all the boxes. He is 6'4", and he does have a big frame that can add weight, and he's actually in really good shape. Sometimes you'll see offensive linemen, and maybe they're not in the greatest shape. You could tell that Daniel lifts and that he's fit. So, I mean, he was impressive as well.
And then you've got Colin Howe here, a defensive tackle. He's big, he's thick, he looks like your classic nose tackle. What's impressive about him?
I liked his quickness, but he's built like a nose. So he had the big lower half. He's got a lot of weight below, say, his belly button. So, I mean, and it's not bad weight either. So, I mean, he actually comes out of his stance extremely well, and he moved well laterally. And he may be that type of athlete that you recruit as a nose tackle and just tell him to kind of take the double and sink it or split it. And that's what I kind of see out of him. However, the other part to that was, too, he had a couple of really good takeoffs in the pass rush period where you're like, he might be that disruptive, penetrating type of three technique who could wreak havoc on the inside. But he was really impressive. Obviously at 6', 290, he's a little shorter, but I wouldn't, once again, if I was a university coach, I'd be all over this kid and I would try and turn him into that interior defensive lineman that we're all looking for, or they're all looking for now.
So then we have the receiver Hakeem Harris, 6'4", 185 pounds. He runs extremely well, and at 6'4", running extremely well, like, need we say more?
Yeah, Hakeem, like, he looks the part and he ran the part.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. He did solid in the one-on-one period. At that point, I kind of got pulled away for a little bit. But I mean, when I saw him go through the combine, I was like, that's intriguing. And then I saw his 40 and was like, yep, that's impressive. He's obviously worked at it, both the start and getting down the field. So, and then there's just like when I look at players, a lot of time I'll look at like ceiling. So what's their ceiling? So they're an awesome player right now, that's fantastic. However, but what is their ceiling? So when we put them on a list and people start asking us about them, we can say, oh, he has a high ceiling, or he's kind of capped out, but he is an awesome football player. So I would say at 6'4" and you can run well, you have a high ceiling. So I mean, he kind of jumped out to me for those reasons.
And then lastly, you have Jonathan Chartier, an athlete. He did mostly offensive drills at this showcase, but he is an exceptional athlete. At 6'1", 185 pounds, he's one of the Herman products. Herman is a very strong powerhouse, traditionally powerhouse program. What do you think about him?
I like Jonathan. Jonathan, we had come across him like 2 years ago following, I believe it was an FPC event. And then we kind of were unable to track him there because we couldn't get his film and such. So we had thought that he had like moved along or had kind of pushed out or graduated or something. And then, and then he showed up at an FPC event, or he showed up at the combine in Burlington, and lo and behold, there was Jonathan Chartier again. So I mean, another one of the athletes who will get consideration for the CFC 100, the versions coming up. So yeah, he did extremely well. I remember, if I remember correctly, the last time we saw him, he was in it as a DB, and then this time he was in it. He was doing a variety of different drills. He seemed to be running quite a few routes. So yeah, just a really good athlete. He's actually put together. He's got good movement skills. So yeah, it was good to see that he's still around, and then yeah, he's put his name back in some consideration for the CFC 150, CFC 100 lists coming up.
So you can find the CFC 100, which is the top high school prospects, and the CFC 60, which are the top CEGEP and junior college prospects, player class rankings under the rankings tab on CanadaFootballChat.com. You can purchase your CFC Insider membership today for access to these rankings, analysis, and more daily recruiting coverage from across Canada. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, Instagram CFC_football, and YouTube for more exclusive content. I know that we have got a ton of stuff that's going to be going up in the next week or so on those social media accounts. So don't forget to follow those. There's a lot of great stuff coming your way. So let's just dive into the differences between these showcases, combines, tryouts, because I know a lot of parents had, as I was walking around and looking at the athletes, I was also interacting with a lot of the parents, and they were all asking pretty much similar questions. So I think we should just dive in a little bit to the difference between these and how it is going to be going forward with our events, the CFC Prospect Game, that's going to be broadcast on TSN in June. We have the tryouts coming out first in March, as I said at the top of the show. So, Clint, let's just get your just description of these different events and what players can expect from them.
Well, the big one right now is the Prospect Game itself, or the way that we're going to build the rosters for that, that being the TSN game. So right now we've just concluded or completed the CFC Prospect Game showcases. So those showcases are open, which means that a 100, a 150, or somebody not ranked, as long as they fit within the graduation year and the birth year, are eligible for those showcases in an effort to put themselves in a position to move on to the Prospect Game tryouts, which are not open. They are invitation only. So that invite will probably include the athletes that we like from each of the regions. So, for example, this year at the CFC Pros Game tryouts, there will be one in Winnipeg, which will kick it off, and then one in Calgary, and then one in Burlington, and then one in Montreal. Now, so those are the tryouts. So you got to do an event, which leads into, and then you have to do the tryout, and then if you do well, you're going to be selected as one of the top 60 players in Canada, and you will be put on one of two rosters. Those two rosters will compete against each other in the prospect game in Ottawa, June 1st?
June 1st, yeah.
June 1st. So that's what a showcase is. A showcase leads into a tryout. A tryout leads into the actual prospect game itself.
And we kind of left Vancouver out because it's a little bit different. The Vancouver tryout, or Burnaby, I guess, is going to be mixed with the Fox 40 Prospect Challenge. So that combine will be happening within that weekend. So the invites to the prospect game will be included in that Fox 40 Prospect Challenge, correct?
Yes. The way it's working in Vancouver this year, or BC, is that it's going to be attached to that, and that will be their tryout event. So they're going to do the FPC, which I believe is a 3-day affair.
March 14th to the 17th.
Yeah, so they're doing a 3-day affair, and from that, those players who fit into that grad category or that birth year, 2002, will be pushed through, or that will be their tryout, which would, if they get through, feed them into one of the two 30-man rosters, or that group of 60 players who will play in the prospect game.
And then so they had that showcase specifically for the prospect game, but we also had the CFC 100 combines and then the Fox 40 combine. So how did that differentiate, or what was the purpose of those?
So a CFC 100 combine, the format will be similar to, say, a showcase, not a tryout, but to a showcase. But the sole purpose of the CFC 100 combines is to identify players to potentially put them onto the CFC 100 for whatever their grad year is, or the CFC 150. We strongly encourage the CFC 100s, or 150s, as there's going to be that group now too, to attend these events. We actually will contact them and invite them to the event personally. For them, it's the opportunity to move up the list. So that's kind of what a CFC 100 combine is. It's like, all right, so all you people out there who think you are a CFC 100 quality caliber or CFC 150 athlete, come out and show us. All right, why would I want to be on the 100 or the 150? Because we release that list between 4 and 6 times a year, and there's a lot of people both here in Canada and in the United States who work their way up and down that list. So in terms of value for your dollar, I would say most CFC 100 or CFC 150s, because they're going to be treated just like the 100s, you usually have between 5 and 9 articles written on you in a year. And you usually will have a list that's released between 4 and 6 times a year. So you're looking at not just going to the combine for the purpose of getting the numbers of the data, but you're looking at the social media machine pushing out your name between 10 and 15 times a year. That's kind of where we're different. So, and that's kind of what the whole purpose of the CFC 100 combine is. You think you're a 100? Come and prove it. Okay, you just proved you're a 100 or a 150. Now, let us put your name out on 6 different occasions on our lists. All right, so now let us write a profile about you. Or possibly some of the athletes have had 2 profiles written in a year on them.
Yeah, we do quite a few profiles.
Yeah, so there's that. That's the value of the 100, and then, or the 150, which is coming out soon. The third part of that is, if you're on the 100 or the 150, I will, off my own personal account, I will do an evaluation and push you out as the prospect of the day. So there's a number of coaches, both in Canada and on the other side of the border, who follow me. So it's just one other way in which we push your name out to everybody. So I mean, what is a 100 combine? A 100 combine is an opportunity to go on the list. What is that going to do for me? It's going to have my name pushed out there multiple times throughout the year with an evaluation from myself or somebody in the scouting bureau. It's also going to include me pushing you out as the prospect of the day, which for sure will happen once a year. If we roll through an entire list, it may happen twice a year. It hasn't to this point, but for sure once a year. So that would be the purpose of a 100 combine. Come and compete to show me you want to be on the list, but you're also going to compete against other 100s, which may very well raise your stock. Or if you show up and you're not in great shape, or if you show up and you are slow, well then obviously you may not go up the list. All right. And if you totally duck it on a continual basis, all right, and your film's not up to date and stuff like that, well, then naturally you're not going to move up the list. You can figure that out on your own, that part of it.
So just to reiterate, the CFC 100 is a merit-based list. So there is zero money that is exchanged, which is a misinformation quite a lot. And these combines just confirm whether you are a CFC 100 or 150 quality or athlete. So it is in your best interest to get to these events. And of course, we have our scouting bureau, which is across Canada, that are watching players as well throughout their high school seasons in person, watching them play their high school games. We also are obviously evaluating through their highlight film. And then these combines are just a third way that we can confirm whether a player deserves to be ranked or not, solely based on their merit. So it's a really good, it's going to be a really great thing for this with adding in now the CFC prospect game, because it's solid in the confirmation of the players that are going to be put out on those 35 man rosters, and just let them do their thing. So that's a really exciting new addition to CanadaFootballChat.com. So we're just going to finish off with the recruiting tip of the day. We have a couple of funny stories, but is coachable important in my recruitment? This may seem like a pretty commonsensical question. However, a lot of players, maybe it's not in the forefront of their mind how their actions come across when they are at these events. That just example of the ones that just happened, and how their behavior or their ability to listen to instruction, etc., from the evaluators and the coaches that are there. So, Clint, what do you think about this question, and what can you kind of give some insight to these players?
The biggest thing, well, first of all, on our evaluation forms, it obviously has their personal, not their personal information, but like their player information. And then below that, on our forms, there's their testing information. And then below that, there's a section that says coaches' comments, which is open. A coach can make comments, which they do on each and every of the players that are in their group, their position group. But there's two specific questions at the end of our form. And the first one is the athlete a CFC 100/CFC 150 caliber football player? And it has a box, it has two boxes, and it says yes or no. And they're asked to check that box. Right below that, and the only other question on our form, it says, is the athlete coachable? And it's a pretty basic statement. So is the athlete able to digest information? Is the athlete able to take a coachable moment or point and apply it in order to improve their game? It's just that simple. So, everywhere or at every level I've ever coached at, I've seen players who maybe not the most talented, but they are extremely coachable. Therefore, they're successful because they can tweak, modify, adjust on the fly, and apply a coachable point. I've also seen the other side of it, which is the side you don't ever want to see, where somebody has an immense toolbox of talent. However, they fail to be coachable. So they don't know how to process information. They think that what they're doing trumps everything that's happening at that point, and they do not apply what the coaches tell to them. And we actually put that on the form, and I actually talk to coaches about it. So, I mean, you have to be coachable. You have to be able to not just give ideas, but one of the biggest leadership things I think that people fail to touch on is the ability to listen. So when you're a player, you need to listen. Especially if your coach is a legit coach with a legit background, you need to be a sponge. I mean, we've all been in scenarios where we had the dream coach and we wanted them to coach us forever. Now, as players, if you play long enough, you'll also run into the other end of the spectrum, which is a coach who may be new at what he's doing or he or she moved to a new position, so their field experience doesn't apply to it. And you just have to be patient, and you have to kind of take what they're saying, be respectful. Whatever's good out of that, use it. Whatever's bad out of that, drop it. But that's the number one thing I look for in players is you're looking at talent, but you're also looking at coachability, okay, and character.
So this past at the CFC Prospect Game showcases, we actually, just through your experience and your background, you called up quite a few of your U Sport coach colleagues. So in addition to having very high caliber coaches there, leading these athletes along, as well as them getting an eye on those players for recruitment purposes. You experienced, you interacted with the athletes, and so you have these youth sport coaches and other scouts that are there observing and watching. You had a funny story and how that could, not look so favorable when those other coaches are taking a look.
Yeah, well, when you're in a combine setting or a showcase setting, and you're going through drills, and for us, I mean, the open tryouts are unpadded. So athletes are doing drills, and the drills are designed specifically to check their movement or their ability as a defensive player to come to balance and be in a position to either tap a hip or make a play on the ball. And we make it very clear that there's no contact in these periods. We make it very clear that we want them to stay on their feet. And every single combine, okay, or showcase, there is the one or two players who don't understand how to control their body, and their lack of control of their body usually results in them doing things they shouldn't, which results in myself or one of the other camp staff or combine staff correcting them. And usually the first time you correct them, it's positive. The second time is somewhat a little more forceful, but this weekend, a young man 3 times in a row went to the ground. The third time, he actually basically did a reverse clothesline on a receiver and gave him a bloody nose.
Oh, jeez.
But, you're telling the kid, and he's walking, the player, you're telling the player, to correct his, that's not what we're doing right now. And that player immediately goes into self-defense mode, which you don't want to do in front of a group of experienced coaches. That self-defense mode leads to excuses or leads to a defensive mechanism kicking in where it's someone else's fault. So I would just encourage all the young athletes, just listen to the tempo that's been explained for the drill and just be in a position to make the plays. And as experienced coaches, we're going to be able to tell whether or not you can move your feet or not move your feet. When somebody's lunging, tackling, dragging, spinning, doing all those things, that tells me that you don't have the movement skills necessary to get into a position. So, I mean, just be cognizant of that. And when you're corrected, correct it. If you're corrected twice, don't talk back to a coach. Or, for example, I corrected a young man twice, possibly even 3 times this week, and he started talking back to me, and I was kind of yeah, I'm just Clint Uttley, but I was at this point, you should probably just stop talking and get back in the line. So I would encourage all the young athletes, just be super coachable. Coachability and character will carry as much weight as talent, especially at this level. Obviously, if athletes move to the pro level, it kind of gets a little...
It's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
But you're looking at college right now, so if you're in great shape and you can play the game and you're coachable and you have solid character, you're going to get your opportunity to play at the next level. Just be coachable.
So those are great tips. You can find this recruiting tip and others on CanadaFootballChat.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, Instagram CFC_football, and YouTube for all of these great tips. So that's another episode of Recruiting Masters brought to you by the CFC Insider. Thanks, Clint, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So you can find all of this great content. Sign up today to be a CFC Insider member on CanadaFootballChat.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.